Welcome back to Level Golf, a game of sorts where we pit two evolution lines against each other to see who can complete battles better. The premise is simple. A Pokemon that can win a battle with a lower level must be a better Pokemon, at least for that battle. Last time, we saw how the Johto starters compare in Soul Silver. This video had some problems, which we'll be fixing today and in the future. I want to redo the starters with some updated rules and without skipping any mandatory trainers. However, I also don't think that would make for a very good video on its own because it would be too similar to the first one. Which brings us to our current matchup, Chikorita versus Unown. So here's how Level Golf works in a bit more detail. Some rules will be changing, by the way. I don't want to make this intro too long, so if you want to understand why I'm making certain changes, I will show text to explain, but nothing more. So, each evolution line will play through the game separately, and for every mandatory battle, they'll be given a score, which is the level they started the battle at on their winning attempt, plus the level they ended the battle at after gaining the experience from the final KO, divided by 2. If the opponent only has one Pokemon, then the score is just the starting level. I will say that I'm not totally happy with this scoring system, but it's still the best I can come up with while avoiding the Bugsy problem and accounting for experience groups. Scores are only calculated for mandatory battles. Any battle that is okay to lose, can be ended by catching a Pokemon or running away, can be avoided while still completing the game, or happens in a battle facility does not count towards score. The goal for each contestant is to have the lowest score at the end of the game, which means they will have to win battles with the lowest levels that they can manage. To do that, I will make use of all resources the game provides at the given point in the game's story. Breeding, X items, event content, whatever. I am no longer requiring that the actions leading up to and during one battle have to be consistent with those of another battle. This means all single-use items are effectively infinite use for most purposes. I don't expect this to matter very much. I'm also going to allow Pokemon to be at levels lower than what's normal before the daycare, while still paying respect to their evolution levels. The only things that are off limits are trading Pokemon from another game, unless it's for a trade evolution, and a handful of moves. I am also limiting myself to 3 bag items per battle. Both before and after reaching whatever place lets you acquire a Pokemon infinitely, all battles are done with a fresh Pokemon that has IVs spread however I want, 0 EVs, and a neutral nature. My Pokemon will also be starting battles with their EXP bar at 0%. While we'll only be using Pokemon from the competing evolution line in battles, other Pokemon will help us get ready for those battles, and those Pokemon need some limits to keep them from going out of control. That's where the par and level cap systems come in. An enemy trainer's par will be the average level of their Pokemon, rounding up to the next integer. The level cap for a given battle will be the highest par out of all the battles we've faced so far. The levels of all my Pokemon that are not used in battle may only go up to the level cap. My Pokemon who are battling are not allowed to faint or switch out. If they do faint, then I reload a save made before the battle, give them 1 rare candy for every fail, and try again, or change my strategy. This is a natural defense against strategies that rely too much on luck. I also added some more limits for when Pokewalker courses are available. Okay, with the bulk of the rules explained, I want to tell you some things I'm not changing. First of all, the soloing aspect. Yes, I agree that seeing how well a Pokemon can solo a fight is perhaps not the most useful thing, but there's not much else you can do. You can't really defend a Pokemon by saying just switch out every time the matchup looks bad. Of course, don't bring Meganium to Lance. Of course, don't bring Typhlosion to Claire. But if not them, then who? And how do you factor that into a score? It's a problem you must represent somehow, and I think the most appropriate way is simply to make them suffer a larger score. Second, doing things the average player won't do. Yeah, I get this complaint, but everyone's idea of average gameplay varies somewhat and is based on their own experiences. I had a Pokewalker, I'm down as hell for including that content, but you might not be. Also, maybe in some regards the average player is just missing out. I played Pokemon Black for the first time recently, and I beat Skyla with a Thunderfang Krokorok, and it was awesome. You should breed more, it can actually be fun. Third and much related, breeding new Pokemon for every battle. Obviously, this isn't anywhere close to typical play, but that's okay, because with these new rule changes, I'm taking level golf in a slightly different direction that is meant to transcend that. Different players will play differently. One will end up having that perfect counter to that one fight, and another will have the stats to make another fight a breeze. I aim to represent the best case scenarios within the bounds I set. Some might disagree with my use of bag items at all. I don't care. Bag items are a part of the game. If that makes Chikorita lose the edge with synthesis, then so be it. And that's all that's worth mentioning. If you want to know the rules in the most foolproof language I could manage and see every caveat I thought would be necessary, I have a whole document of the rules in the description. So then, let's look at our competitors for today. Chikorita needs no introduction. Its shortcomings significantly overstated and some surprising strength in the late game, but still overshadowed by Totodile. Chikorita's position as the middle-of-the-road starter might be in jeopardy today because before it mostly got through the early game by simply following the natural level curve, and it pretty much had to stand a chance against Falkner and Buzzy, but now that the rules have changed, other Pokemon who are better matchups will have a chance to beat them with lower scores, and Chikorita won't get to avoid all those rocket grunts with poison types. Unown, on the other hand, well, it's unknown what they were thinking with this one. Stats far from amazing, a boring ability that does nothing special for it, and only a single usable move, Hidden Power. Hidden Power is a move whose typing and base power are based on the attacker's IV stats, with the best possible base power being 70 and the worst being 30. The power and typing you get are essentially random for every Pokemon, and there's no way to change it. Normally this move is paid very little attention to, but in our rule set, it's not bad at all. The only reason I said it's random is because IVs are random, but they're not random in level golf. We can manipulate the IVs to keep it at max power, and we can change the typing to be optimal for any fight. This makes too many battles boring and predictable, which is why I banned the move from level golf, but since it's impossible for an Unown to not know Hidden Power, we allow it in this case. So, I don't know, maybe Unown does have a chance. Chikorita starts its battle against youngster Mikey at level 2 and finishes at level 3. Unown starts at 1 and ends at 4, scoring the same as Chikorita in the end. Don't read into this, it was just good luck for Unown and bad luck for Chikorita. In Sprout Tower, we see a perfect example of why I handle luck factors how I do. Unown has 2 separate incidents where a crit Vine Whip KOs it from full health. This translates to point penalties for Unown. Chikorita didn't suffer those crits obviously, but it also could have taken them since it resists grass. Chikorita clears every battle against the sages in Sprout Tower starting at level 1. Against the 2 level 6 Bellsprout, Chikorita stalls them out into using Struggle. That trick doesn't work on Elder Lee's Bellsprout because they know a second move, Growth. Fortunately, this move is useless to them because Vine Whip is physical and Growth only raises special attack in this generation. Growth on these Pokemon is a holdover from Gen 2, where all grass moves were automatically special because a move's type was what determined if it was physical or special. I've done a lot more research on what's available at every point in the game, and it turns out I have access to 2 Chesto Berries right now. A held one lets us dodge sleep 1 time from Hoodoo's Hypnosis, and this helps a ton. Unown strategy is basically the same, but instead of finishing at level 9, it finishes at level 7. Which sounds really unintuitive, but that's just how the curves work at these levels. We already know Falkner is a bad fight for Chikorita, and not much has changed since last time. I poison Pidgey this time, expecting my Razor Leaf on the previous turn to bait Falkner into switching, which is something he would do sometimes, but not today. Instead, I get 3 sand attacks in my face. Then things proceed mostly like how they did last time. I also found out that your mom, yes, your mom, can buy me a super potion at this point, possibly even 2, so I use 1 during the battle. I poison Pidgeotto and whittle him down with Razor Leaf, but oddly enough, he never uses Roost in this attempt. Even though Unown has Levitate, it actually is still vulnerable to Pidgey's Sand Attack, so it should not surprise you that on my winning attempt, I simply didn't get hit by Sand Attack. At level 8, Hidden Power Ice is a 3-hit on Pidgeotto. Unown beats the first grunt in Slowpoke well, who has 2 Rattata, starting at level 3. Chikorita's performance right now isn't too shabby I think, but for the moment it has nothing on Hidden Power. What both of these Pokemon should struggle with though is bugs. I decided that the twins Amy and Mimi cannot be skipped, which makes this the first time we've done the battle. I have one Chikorita set up with X attacks and another start with Growl. We target down Spinarak first because it's definitely the bigger threat with Poison Sting. Even so, Ladybug is no slouch either considering the level advantage, and it's only with a bit of good luck we actually win the battle starting at level 5. Hidden Power serves Unown well again with a Psychic type double up on Spinarak again and then Ladybug. Bayleaf's Bugsy strategy is mostly the same except we use Cut instead of Tackle. The HM for Cut is obtainable after beating the rival battle in Azalea and finishing the minigame with the Farfetch'd. The rival battle becomes accessible after beating Proton, which is the same time the gym itself becomes accessible. This means we can just say that we did the rival battle first. In the older games, Cut is pretty much a direct upgrade to Tackle, instead of a downgrade, Gens 5 and 6. It turns out though that our strategy really needed us to have 5 bag items, not 3, so we have to start at level 20. The most notable thing about that level is it's when we start 2-hitting Kakuna and likely avoiding poison. Unown's score is predicated completely on how soon it can KO Scyther with a Rock-type Hidden Power, which is boosted by a Hard Stone obtained on Route 36. If Scyther decides to waste a turn with Leer or Focus Energy and Unown gets a high roll crit, it can do it as low as level 9, but that didn't happen, so we settle for level 15. At that level, it's a 50-50 one-hit without a crit, by far Unown's highest score on a battle yet. On the rival fight, Bayleaf keeps the old King's Rock and Bullet Seed strategy from last time. Then tackle on Zubat and Quilava, with Quilava once again massively throwing for whatever reason. Since Unown is not a starter, it gets to choose which version of the battle it does. Croconaw has Bite, so we'll definitely want to avoid him. Quilava has Smokescreen, so that's not great, but still maybe considerable. Bayleaf has Reflect, not Light Screen, and its other moves aren't too special, so this seems like an easy choice. I give Unown a Choice Scarf bought by your mom so it can outspeed and one-hit Ghastly and hopefully Zubat. Not quite there on Zubat, but Unown handles the confusion well. We use an X special when Bayleaf comes out, and Unown gets a nicely timed crit to win it. Upon entering Goldenrod City, we get access to many new toys, and this clearly benefits Chikorita more than Unown. On last carry, I found that Solar Beam begins to work starting at level 7, while Swords Dance and Razor Leaf didn't really work until level 8. Unown gets a 3-hit KO at level 10. Unown has some trouble here because of Bite and Lick both being super effective. Really the first time in a long time that Chikorita's won something. Last Kathy has 3 identical Jigglypuff. Trainers like this are easy to make a build for, since if you can beat one of the Pokemon, you'll almost certainly beat them all. What was surprising though was both of them sweeping at levels 5 and 6. Unown has some trouble with the first one because Disable forces it to use Struggle twice. Then the other two graciously don't use Pound at all. That's just the basic trainer AI for you, I guess. Whitney's Clefairy is a real jerk to Chikorita because it insists on encoring it into Leech Seed every single time. We're totally fine to burn through most of its PP though. When Clefairy is one turn away from fainting from Leech Seed, I use an X Defend, which lets us have one Leech Seed left for Miltank, which lets us turn Stomp into a 3-hit. Reflect makes it even weaker. With no more Encore, I can set up with Swords Dance. I figure I'll probably get the KO from this range at +4 attack, but it's just barely not enough. Fortunately, I can survive to go to +6 to ensure the KO next time. Unown sets up with an X Defend and an X Special. And how does this stupid thing respond? Clefairy rolling Uproar is less than ideal, and we're left with 18 HP going into Miltank. Showdown says this is a 50-50 damage roll. I decide to take the coin flip, we survive, and then on the turn we heal, Miltank goes roll out, which is great because now it can't heal and we can get an easy KO with no flinches. The 2 beauties on Route 37 can be fought as either one double battle or 2 back-to-back single battles. For Chikorita, it ended up being best to have one Chikorita set up Reflect and one set up Swords Dance. Barring any annoyances with Encore and Disable, it's not a terribly notable fight. Unown had more trouble with the randomness that can come with double battles and these movesets, and it turned out to fare better in one-on-one. The Chikorita strategy from last time we did the Ekrutik rival battle is mostly the same, except with much worse luck forcing us to start at level 19. Substitute a Leech Seed to get the health back, Swords Dance, and Razor Leaf. Unown comes in barely any better at level 18. The strategy is essentially the same as the last rival fight, so we can just move on. The entire Ekritique gym uses only the Ghastly line, and you already know how we deal with Ghastly, so you can guess how it goes for the most part. Several of the opponent Pokemon have only one meaningful attack, which is Nightshade. This means that in those fights, our defense is completely irrelevant and we only need just enough HP to survive one Nightshade plus an extra 4th to set up Substitute. In more simple terms, the opponent's level times 1.3 repeating. This was my strategy in the first video, but Chikorita scores a bit worse since EVs are always 0 now. I imagine I'll keep doing this strategy for any Pokemon that can learn Substitute. Unknown is unknown. Medium Edith has a single Haunter which has Sucker Punch. For whatever reason, this specific Haunter loves to use Sucker Punch over and over, and it will basically waste all of its PP instantly, which makes it very easy to set up on. We can beat this Haunter at level 1. Yes, Nightshade would instantly KO, but this Haunter is just too obsessed with Sucker Punch to notice. We don't even have to worry about Curse because it will only do 3 damage per turn and Leech Seed will cover that well. Unknown's strategy is to set up 3x defense, which will let it survive 2 Sucker Punches when holding a Colbur Berry at level 11. This gets derailed when Haunter uses Curse when I'm at +2, so I decide to go for it right there. Haunter survives on a Sliver, but then I can heal and survive the next Sucker Punch on a Sliver as well. This was another 50-50 range. On Morty, Bayleaf does a cautious sort of setup and sweep where we make sure to keep Leech Seed and Substitute up as much as possible. Unknown instantly KOs Ghastly to set up on one of the Haunter. It's pretty annoying to deal with either of them, but I found Haunter to be slightly better. 1x speed and 1x special along with a Choice Scarf let us outspeed and one-hit Morty's entire team at level 25. We are halfway through the gyms. Time to check in on our competitors. Unknown was looking like the clear winner early on, but Chikorita's made a nice comeback post-daycare. Turns out this part of the game is not so kind to Psychic types. And that's not to say Unknown had a bad performance overall in Morty's gym. I would say it was fine, not counting that last fight, but Chikorita just did way better. After beating a Grunt, we can use Surf at the Lake of Rage to get the choice specs. Really the perfect item for Mr. I only know one move. I don't know why exactly, but in the first video I was rather conservative about using Substitute. This time around, I went all the way to Jasmine using Substitute as much as I could before it dawned on me that it's going to be a blight on the video in the same way Attract, Double Team, and Hidden Power were on the first one. Totally banning Substitute didn't seem right though, because it is very much justified in some scenarios, so I came to a compromise. Substitute is only allowed to be used if an enemy Pokemon on the field has 2 or more status moves that cause a negative effect to their target, or they have a move with greater than 100 base power. This makes Black Belt Nope the first battle since getting the Substitute TM where I would use it, but can't. There is one other wrinkle I ought to mention. As you should know, Chuck, Jasmine, and Price can be beat in any order, and this time around I've noticed a place where this can matter. If we get to the battle with Jasmine first, we can have a Smeargle sketch Irontail off of Steelix before we win the battle. Then we can pass it down through this breeding chain you see here to get it on Chikorita before we've got the TM. I hadn't yet realized this when I recorded this fight against Black Belt Nobe, but it turns out that Razor Leaf is a bit stronger than Irontail if Overgrow is active, and it's what allowed me to 2-hit Machoke in this situation, so I'll just leave that be. Unknown simply attacks them with the choice specs. Machop uses Focus Energy and then Vital Throw, which is a negative priority move, and Machoke just spams Leer for some reason. Well, brain beats brawn. Chikorita continues using Magical Leaf to disrupt Focus Punch when Chuck tries to use it, but we add on Poison Powder to speed up the chip damage and Substitute to dodge a lot of damage. This lets Chikorita win the battle starting at level 9. Much like our friend Quilava, Unknown beats Primeape with a 1-hit Hidden Power and then crit 1-hits Poliwhirl at level 28. It really seems like slow and steady is the way to go with Chuck. A few uneventful fights later, we arrive at Jasmine. Bayleaf starts this battle 4 levels lower than last time. The Magnemite both have Supersonic and Thunder Wave, so Substitute is allowed. I use it and Swagger to beat them. Swagger is purely a drawback for them because they have no physical moves. I use Reflect when the first Magnemite is close to KOing itself to coax Jasmine to send out Magnemite number 2 instead of Steelix. Eventually they both faint from confusion damage. Leveling up to 21 before Steelix will be important. Steelix only has one status move that causes a negative effect to the target, and its strongest move is only 100 base power, which is not greater than 100, so while I'm no longer allowed to use Substitute, I still have the existing one. I use Reflect, and Steelix uses Iron Tail to break the sub, and then Steelix uses Screech. If it were not for that Screech, Iron Tail would usually do just a bit more than 50%. I'd only be able to get one counter in before I'd have to use my last bag item just to survive another hit, but I'd have to hope for a miss on the turn I heal. Leech Seed is not an option because there's currently no way to breed both it and counter onto Bayleaf at the same time. With Screech, Iron Tail is now 11 in 16 to one hit, which is slightly better odds than a miss. We survive it to get a guaranteed one hit with counter. Another gym battle, another time Unown does shockingly bad. You might think Hidden Power Ground go burr, and it kind of does, but only starting around level 30. Only a few levels before that does Unown start to outspeed the Magnemite, and even then Steelix's Iron Tail will usually one-hit. Choice specs isn't really changing much, so I used a Metronome, which I also don't think changed much, but I ended up getting the win one level lower with Metronome, so I guess that's better. In the Team Rocket HQ, there's a pair of back-to-back battles. Together they have a diverse team, 4 Rocket Grunts. Whether by actual merit or sheer luck, the best strategy for Unown was an X-Speed with Rock-type Hidden Power. Between Disable, Hypnosis, and Headbutt, Drowsy causes enough trouble to cause us to use 2 full restores just to KO it. This is fine though, because Hidden Power on the Zubat is a 2-hit, and thanks to the X-Speed, Astonish can't flinch us. This starts the second battle, which means we get 3 more bag items to work with, and we immediately put them all to use. A full restore to heal back up, an X-Speed, and then 1 more full restore to heal off a Bite and an Astonish. Then we outspeed and one-hit Zubat and Rattata. Grimer might use Disable on us again, but that's fine, because Struggle counters is minimized by the fact it can't miss, and Grimer seems to never use Smog. Against most of the Rocket Grunts, Chikorita does just a bit better than Unown. Iron Tail sees a healthy amount of use after being the wrong choice on Chuck and Jasmine both. What you might expect to be an easy time for Unown is dampened by a lot of Dark-type moves. Against Petrol, Bayleaf does a not very remarkable Iron Tail sweep. Unown can KO Petrol's lead Zubat at any time, but Raticate does huge damage with Crunch and Sucker Punch, so we set up 2 X-Defense before he comes out. Unown tanks 1 of each and 2-hit KOs Raticate. This simply does not work in our favor until level 24. Coughing is no problem. Bayleaf vs Ariana is basically unchanged, except now we win at level 18. Dragonite is still a capricious little shit. Unown revealed something interesting, and when I say interesting, I actually mean it this time. I noticed that Dragonite seemed to very consistently target Drowsy over Arbok when I was using Unown with Hidden Power Psychic. Psychic was simply the logical choice when the battle had 3 poison types. Dragonite's behavior wasn't perfectly consistent, but consistent enough that it seemed out of the ordinary. My theory was that Dragonite was looking at Unown's Hidden Power type and seeing that it was strong against Arbok and weak against Drowsy, and so it would target whoever I had the worst matchup with. If this is really something in Dragonite's programming, it must be a bit wonky, because I definitely should be seeing a similar effect with Bayleaf, but I never have. Either way, I switched to Hidden Power Bug to confirm the theory. Bug is strong against Drowsy and weak against Arbok, so we should see Dragonite start targeting Arbok first. And indeed we do. This is huge for Unown because now we can be almost certain that Arbok will only be able to land 1 Crunch before getting KO'd instead of 2 or more. This lets Unown win the battle starting at level 16, whereas otherwise it would be winning at level 21 at best. In the Mahogany Town gym, there are 2 pairs of trainers who you must fight either one of in order to reach Price. Skier Diana or Border Patton, and Skier Jill or Border Gerardo. Ignore this guy. He's irrelevant. Although Patton's ground types give Chikorita an offensive advantage, it's actually easier to beat Diana's Jinx because it loves to waste time with Fake Tears and Mean Look, which lets us set up Leech Seed and Substitute for what is a guaranteed win. Fake Tears is another one of those moves that only made sense in this case in Gen 2, since Ice Punch was special back then. Unown has no special tricks, like usual, and Patton's 2 Swinub are weaker on paper, so that's what ended up working better for Unown. Levitate makes their ground-type moves useless, but they still have Icy Wind, so it didn't really matter. Both of them preferred Border Gerardo's 3 Pokemon over Skier Jill's 1 because that Dugong is very bulky and very annoying. The Bayleaf vs Price matchup is essentially unchanged, except now since Substitute is partially restricted, we have to wait out the hail on Seal. Seal is weak enough that we can easily recover any damage it does from Leech Seed. We one-hit Dugong with Razor Leaf. I heal when Piloswine comes out and Blizzard misses. I could have sworn I used an X Special Defend to ensure we survive a Blizzard, but I just didn't, so this Blizzard is a 13 in 16 to one-hit. Alright, so I've dodged one Blizzard and barely survived another that could have KO'd. I've got to make this turn count. In hindsight, this seems like an odd choice, but it did ensure Razor Leaf one-hits, so it did do something. This means I have to heal again, and an Ice Fang does more than 50%. I heal again, and Blizzard once again low rolls. Then I finally hit Razor Leaf. Unown does its worst yet. Unown just keeps getting untimely crits, freezes, and bad damage rolls, and has to start the battle at level 36. We immediately use Hidden Power on Seal and keep the pressure up to make Price use a Hyper Potion and then use Rest. This gives us time to set up an X Special Defend and an X Accuracy, which is to counter Piloswine's Snow Cloak in case he uses Hail. Piloswine uses Ice Fang and we tank it well. A Blizzard misses and the next Hidden Power puts Piloswine down to a Sliver. Same as in the last video, Price just won't heal in this situation, so he uses Ice Fang again, which low rolls and puts us down to a Sliver, and then we KO him. We heal as Dugong comes in and lands a weak Ice Shard followed by an Aurora Beam. Hidden Power is too strong to out-heal and he's down a few turns later. The situation we saw in Team Rocket HQ largely continues in the radio tower. Meganium once again has a very difficult time with Petrol, forcing a start at level 34. Going by how far above par the score is, this is the line's toughest battle since Bugsy. Unown finally gets a break from Dark-type coverage Purgatory and can simply sweep starting around level 24. This is Unown's biggest win on Chikorita so far. Comeback starting now? No. The most important problem for Unown in the underground rival fight is his lead Golbat. We have to have decently high health to KO the Haunter that comes out next. Or he can just pick Mean Look for no reason when he never did that before. Well, when he does attack, the damage is pretty high, so the easier you can deal with Golbat, the easier you can deal with Haunter. Sneasel is no slouch either, but thanks to Hidden Power being Rock type, we one-hit it. Feraligatr knows Crunch, which I need to deal with. I heal, use an X Defend, and heal again to make Crunch a 3-hit. Our Hidden Power on him is also a 3-hit though, so we're left with just 21 HP when it's all said and done, but then comes Magnemite. Bye. Now, obviously if I'm using Hidden Power Rock, fighting Quilava instead of Feraligatr is obvious, but the Feraligatr version of Silver's team has slightly lower levels across the board. All of them are 2 levels lower. And funny enough, Unown's score on this version of his team was also 2 levels lower. Meganium has to go all the way to level 34, which allows us to use Body Slam, which is mostly an upgrade to Iron Tail. With Body Slam, we do a simple sweep. Thankfully, Haunter comes out second to last, so while he does get a curse on us, we take care of him with a Dark-type natural gift, and then one-hit Body Slam Magnemite before we can get KO'd. Bayleaf beats Proton mainly by stalling with Leech Seed and Synthesis. This simply doesn't work well until level 31. Unown goes 1 level lower since that's when it can turn Golbat's Bite into a 3-hit with an X Defend and Wheezing Sludge with an X Special Defend. The Ariana battle is made a lot easier by simply outspeeding her Pokemon. Bayleaf moves first with an X speed at level 27 and Unown with a Choice Scarf at level 39. Now that the level cap is 36, Body Slam is available full time and Meganium takes a solid win on Archer. A Reflect lets us set up to +6 attack. Just barely. If Fire Fang caused a burn, it would have been healed off with a held Lumberry. On the turn we heal, which is also the last turn of Reflect, Houndour only hits a weak bite. Now we set up another Reflect for Houndoom later. Fire Fang lands a burn, but we heal it off. Now we one-hit Houndour and Coughing. Because of Reflect, we survive the Fire Fang and one-hit Houndoom too. Unown has no choice but to go in guns blazing with Hidden Power Rock at level 34. Unown has no choice but to go in guns blazing with Hidden Power Rock at level 43. In the first video, I said I did a standard setup on Ace Trainer Lola at level 22, but now that I look at it again, I have no idea how I did it that low, so level 26 it is. We use Growl many times on Dratini to weaken Dragon Rush. Dratini absolutely hates going second, so we get a free turn as it goes Agility. We have to have at least 41 health when we KO Dratini so that Dragon Rage won't KO us first. Then we KO Dragonair with a natural gift like before. Unown 1 hits Dratini and 2 hits Dragonair at level 31. Dragonair opts to use Slam twice in a row, which is its weakest move, which gives us an opening. Ace Trainer Mike has a lone Dragonair whose strongest move can be made into Dragon Rage after a bit of growling. Once he misses a 75% accurate slam at the right time, we can turn Dragon Rage into a 3-hit after Leech Seed recovery, then spam Synthesis to out-heal him. Since Dragon Rage can't crit, this is a sure win. Unown banks on slam misses to win at level 25. Hidden Power Dragon is a 3-hit, so we need 3 openings. The first one is on turn 1 because the only way Dragonair could KO from full health is if it crits. The second and third openings come from slam missing twice. Aquatail is just barely survivable at level 25, and this win required us to use all 3 bag items already, so I don't expect to take this one any lower. Remember in the first video when I used Earthquake in this fight? Turns out that was just not possible. The TM isn't available until Victory Road, Pokemon can't find it through pickup until level 91, and you can't just breed it onto Chikorita because only Meganium is compatible with the TM. But Body Slam is still pretty good. It's once again Meganium getting the win right at level 32 in a way much like last time. We set up on Gyarados and use an X-Speed, Swords Dance, and Synthesis to stall out Dragon Rage, then all of our other attacks are relatively unthreatening. Eventually we KO Gyarados with 1 Body Slam and 1 Dragonair too. Despite how much we just overpowered those two, we have to Leech Seed Kingdra to keep Dragon Pulse a 3-hit. I have 2 bag items left to use and a bunch of Synthesis, so this should be doable. But then Body Slam paralyzes Kingdra and she immediately cannot move. Last is the second Dragonair, but this one is a 1-hit too. Unown struggles to KO Gyarados with Hidden Power Dragon, but the rest of Claire's team is weak to Dragon, so things work out well enough. A Hydro Pump miss from Kingdra was required, as was surviving this Dragon Pulse. Unown finishes this battle at a truly horrendous level 55. Well folks, it's a complete reversal of course. I really thought Unown would have some good moments in the mid-game, but it's clearly fallen off. The only place I'd expect Unown to do well, possibly, between the end of the game and now is the Elite Four, but Ever the awkwardly positioned Ace Trainer Kobe. Bayleaf defeats his single Dragonair at level 23 with Leech Seed and Synthesis spam. Unown wins at level 25 with a 3-hit Hidden Power. Meganium's bottleneck with the Kimono Girls is still Flareon. Coming in on low health makes him use Quick Attack, which is better than Fire Blast. We set up Light Screen and Swords Dance as Flareon graciously misses 1 Fire Blast. At this health, I can just barely survive 2 Fire Blasts thanks to an Aqua Berry. The low health baits Quick Attack again, and then since we're naturally faster, we can get the final hit on Flareon. Also, mostly for funsies, I used Giga Drain on Vaporeon, which we can now breed from Paris. Unown's problem is a combination of Umbreon, Espeon, and Flareon. For the first two, we'd ideally use Hidden Power Bug, but Flareon resists that, making it into a big problem. Fighting works better because it's neutral to Flareon while still being strong against Umbreon. We can afford to be not very effective against Espeon because Psychic doesn't do very much to us in return, so it evens out. Level 52? Yikes. On Ace Trainer Gavin, Bayleaf has some excellent luck with Body Slam to win at level 28. The para on Kingler was absolutely vital because it gave us the speed advantage when another stomp from Kingler would obviously KO. Unown uses Hidden Power Rock to deal with Flareon as fast as possible because it has Bite. It's a 2-hit on Flareon and 1 hit on the other two. On Ace Trainer Jake, despite being 13 levels lower, we move first against his Parasect, and after a Swords Dance, 1-hit it with a Fire-type Natural Gift. Golduck hits us with 1 Screech but misses another as we 3-hit it. Vaporeon is just barely missing the KO between a Quick Attack and a Bite as we crit 1-hit it with Razor Leaf. A modest amount of luck there. Unown wins with Hidden Power Flying at level 40. I think this is less about the typing and more about the awful RNG in this fight. Sand Attack, Water Pulse Confusion, and whatever Parasect decides to do. Ace Trainer Jamie's Rapidash's only Fire-type attack is Fire Spin, so it's not terribly hard for Bayleaf to set up on and then KO both her Pokemon. Unown's choice of type is obviously Ground, but it's still not exactly smooth sailing. Stomp does about half even with an X-Defend at level 28, and Discharge does even more, leading to us having to crit 1-hit Flaffy. Meganium's strategy for the Victory Road rival battle is mostly the same, but with Earthquake replaced by Growl to make the setup on Sneasel significantly easier and an Aqua Berry to make Typhlosion's attacks easier to survive. A paralysis from Body Slam helps out. Unown's choice for type is between Rock and Fire. Rock is good against half of Silver's team, and so is Fire. Magneton turned out to be the more valuable KO to get quickly. We one-hit Sneasel and Haunter. It's notable that this level is about when we can start surviving a Feint Attack and Shadow Ball without having to use any items in between. Golbat has Bite, but it's not that strong without Stab, so Hidden Power is a 2-hit. Meganium gets 1 hit with a crit I'm sure we didn't need. Magneton is a regular 1-hit, and then it's just Kadabra. He disables us, but then we get a critical hit struggle. Nice try, buddy. Remember in the first video when I thought level 47 was bad? The level cap for the whole Pokemon League is 50, which means Meganium can now use Grass Knot, Leaf Storm, and Ring Out. Oh boy. Meganium's strategy for Will originally involved using Natural Gift on the lead Xatu, which with our new rules didn't work out until level 36. However, I found that I could do it one level lower by using Leech Seed instead. We start off by Leech Seeding Xatu, then setting up Swords Dance, and only after that an X Speed. This makes us faster than Xatu, which will make her stop spamming Me First. Me First is not a priority move, it's just a move that only works if you move first, so it's only used by very fast Pokemon. Now that she can't use it, she'll start using Psychic, but since we'll move first now, we can dodge that by one-hitting Xatu. Well, Xatu U-turns just before that turn comes, but after that we sweep with Body Slam, with most of them being 2 hits. Exeggutor sets up Reflect and manages to survive fairly long and get a special defense drop, which is pretty bad. Healing costs us our last bag item before we take her out, and an Egg Bomb misses at a perfect time. Last is Slowbro. Psychic is obviously going to KO, and Body Slam does not paralyze or crit, so this is looking like a loss. But then, Slowbro misses the KO with Water Pulse. That is how we do. Unown clocks in at a surprisingly reasonable level 48. Xatu U-turns, and so we immediately hit Xatu number 2 for almost all of its health. We have enough bulk that U-turn and Ominous Wind are 3 hits. Xatu number 1 tries to Uno reverse card us with Me First, but Xatu's hidden power type is Fighting, not Dark. The rest of Will's team goes down simple enough. Once again, there's just not much to say for Meganium vs Koga. We start the battle at level 41. Unown uses the obvious hidden power Psychic to one-hit Ariados. Muck is a 2-hit. It misses its only shot at Gunk Shot. Fortress takes many hits to down, but it can't really do anything except explode. Exploding seems like the obvious choice, but it just never does it. Crobat is a 2-hit as it just spams double teams which end up not mattering, and then Venomoth is a crit 1-hit. With Swords Dance and X-Speed and Reflect, Meganium makes quick work of Bruno's team. We get crits to one-hit Hitmonchan and Machamp, but I think we had that win in the bag either way. Alright Unown, this is your moment. His team has 0 coverage and his lead is the easiest thing you could set up on. Levitate will finally do something too. No? Level 49? Okay. Meganium can beat Karen starting at level 36, which is notably when we can start outspeeding Houndoom at +1 speed. The sweep goes much like last time. Stalling out Gengar takes extra long because Karen uses both full restores on it. Rock is super effective against 2 of Karen's Pokemon and resisted by none of them, so it's the logical choice. The problem is that dastardly duo of Umbreon and Gengar. Umbreon has some absolutely ridiculous bulk and spams evasion. Also, using an item on Unown will count as moving for the payback damage boost, so that's nice. You are not at all out of the woods after KOing Umbreon. You don't just have to beat Umbreon, you have to do it with reasonable consistency. Hidden Power Fighting will not work because Gengar is immune to it, and Bug will not work because Gengar quad resists it, and it's neutral to Houndoom, who is a whole nother problem. PP stalling Gengar will not work because Lick will do too much damage over time, and Spite will force you to use a PP restoring item after Gengar starts using Struggle, which, let's just say, ain't happening. So, Rock it is. Umbreon takes 4 hits, Gengar 2, Murkrow 1, Houndoom 1, which is a 9 and 16 to 1 hit, and Vileplume 2. We also had to use an X-Speed to move first on most of the team. Meganium's strategy against Lance is essentially the exact same, although we start just a bit higher at level 50. The higher level means we only need 1 X speed to move first on Aerodactyl. Body Slam and Iron Tail 2 or 1 hit everyone on his team. Unown uses an X Defend and X Speed immediately. Hidden Power Rock is a 2-hit on Gyarados. We survive a crunch comfortably and then 1-hit it. Everything else is outsped. Charizard is a 1-hit. We 2-hit the first Dragonite as it misses a Fire Blast. The second one is crit 1-hit. Any move from the final Dragonite could KO, but Lance did not spend any of his points in intelligence, so he picks Blizzard, which is both his least accurate move and the only one that has a chance to not KO, that being 50-50 odds. Blizzard misses. With that, his fate is sealed. Hidden Power knocks Dragonite into healing range and Lance uses full restores until he runs out and one more hit finishes the job. Well, I was pretty much right about Unown after all. Levitate did just about nothing, and a move that you can change the type of is really nice, but when that's your only move, any trainer who's not going out of their way to stick to one type is a big problem. Of course, Unown did struggle noticeably against gym leaders, but I think this is more that they just have stronger Pokemon. Compare the scores on gym leaders to the trainers in their gyms. The difference is pretty stark, and this is easily explained by the fact that they have evolved Pokemon and better IV stats. Unown's final score is 1682.5. I think we can safely say this is what a bad score looks like. Chikorita's new score is 1333.5, which is up a lot from the old score of 1080.5. This difference is mostly coming from the fact we're not skipping minor battles in the mid-game. If I omit the same set of trainers from the new spreadsheet, we get 1058.5. Chikorita's still pretty much the same in my eyes. Well then, okay, I guess that's all I've got to say. Next time we'll be redoing Cyndaquil, which I think will be very interesting. Subscribe now so you can see that in, like, 8 months.